It gives me a great pleasure now to welcome to the podium Professor the Honorable Errol Morrison, Dr. Errol Morrison, who is the President of the University of Technology in Jamaica. I also want to welcome as well to Antigua Dr. Elaine Wallace, the University Registrar, whom you heard from a few moments ago, as well as Mr. Hector Wheeler, the Associate Vice President for Advancement. Special welcome as well to Professor Hermie Howitt, the Associate Dean, College of Health Sciences, and Dr. Sean Moncrief, the head of the School of Pharmacy. Dr. Morrison is an outstanding Jamaican and son of the Caribbean soil. He is a physician, a professor, a pioneer, and a phenomenon. He's the holder of an MD and PhD degrees, amongst others, and has been bestowed with the Order of Jamaica. He is a Fellow of the Royal College of Physicians of Glasgow in Scotland, a Fellow of the American College of Physicians, a Fellow of the Royal Society of Medicine of the United Kingdom, etc. And in 1992, at the University of the West Indies, he was appointed Professor of Biochemistry, and in 1994, Professor of Endocrinology. In 1999, he was made Pro-Vice Chancellor and Dean, School for Graduate Studies and Research, University of the West Indies. In 1993, he founded the University Diabetes Outreach Program, which now hosts the largest annual international diabetes conference in the Caribbean region. Since 2007, the University Diabetes Outreach Project includes the diabetes-related activities in the University of the West Indies, the University of Technology, and the North Caribbean University. Dr. Morrison has received many international awards. In 2012, he was awarded the Honorary Doctor of Laws degree from the University College of the Caribbean for years of sterling service in the fields of education and the medical sciences, and for extensive pioneering research in diabetes. Also in 2012, Professor Morrison was invited to chair the National Innovation Awards Steering Committee, Ministry of Science, Technology, Energy, and Mining in Jamaica. He is married and enjoys reading and public speaking, and he has held the post of the University of Technology Jamaica Presidency since March 1st of 2007. I welcome both his wife, Dr. Faye-Ann Morrison, and Professor Morrison to present a lecture on science and technology for Caribbean development. Professor Morrison.
Thank you so much, Dr. Ed. It's good to be in Antigua and to be able to share with you some of the thinking around an area which is an imperative if the Caribbean region is going to, in any way, attempt to become an overall region of developed status in the near future. Now, when I speak of science, in its broadest context, it is really a body of knowledge, in the simplest Oxford definition. And when we say technology, it is the application of that knowledge. However, we tend to tease out from technology the area most importantly contributing to national development, that of engineering, hence the E. And then we need to quantify, we need to measure, we need to be able to assess that which is being done, the mathematics. And so we get the term STEM. And if you look at what we're saying here, if you can read it, there's also an I. The I refers to doing things differently, seeing how you can take old things and do them anew, and make it contributory to innovation. And that's what the I is all about. Now, oh, that was like Usain Bolt. When we think of the little Caribbean, which you can hardly see as it spreads across here, as a part of the worldwide picture, we need to be thinking globally. As I see here in Antigua, the kind of electronic technology that is moving and like wildfire, we need to be appreciative that the world is a stage. And when we think of the Caribbean, the Anglophone Caribbean in particular, and inclusive of the Bahamas, they are Caribbean sometimes and Atlantic at other times. But nonetheless, the point is, in the Caribbean, locally based, locally active, locally involved, locally implementing global context. So I want to introduce a new word. It's called glocal. Glocal. Thinking globally, but acting locally. Glocal. And that's the order of the day as we move through this set of slides for your contemplation. Let us take it first, right down to the 1960s. We had a vice chancellor who was in charge of the University of the West Indies. He was knighted. He's from St. Lucia, Sir Arthur Lewis. And whilst he was here in the Caribbean, he was one of our most outstanding economists. He left from here and he went to Princeton in New Jersey, and there, whilst contributing to the whole worldwide context of economics, he was awarded the Nobel Prize for Economics. I spent a little time on it just to let you know that right here we have some tremendous minds that contribute to world concepts. And what Sir Arthur always said from time to time is, there are some things which we in the Caribbean do best. And there are some things which only we in the Caribbean will want to do. Those words have been haunting us over the decades. And let us see why it is that we are concentrating on these words of Sir Arthur and how best we need to take advantage of those thoughts. Since the mid-90s, this is not referring to the animal. This is really the CARICOM heads of government, not the House, right? And in the mid-90s, as a group, they set a goal that they would like to see 15% of the secondary cohort graduating, at least 15% going into tertiary. And this is against the background that's saying the DOM rep, nearly 30% go. Cuba, nearly 50% go. In North America, over 70% go from the secondary into the tertiary. And what do you see here? Overall, in the CARICOM Anglophone territories, no more than 7% are moving into the tertiary. I've heard your Minister of Technology already bemoaning the fact that unless you're getting up into the 30s, the whole future of the development of the Caribbean is at stake. Now, the whole of the tertiary contribution is being made from a cross-section of institutions, the community colleges, teachers' colleges, universities, and vocational training institutions. These make up the tertiary component of our training institutions. And since 1980, the Caribbean in general, led by UWI, has been focusing on graduate education. Why graduate education? Because this is the point that Minister Mansour is getting at. When you have graduated from a tertiary institution, you're expected to be more able to think anew, to take old things and make them new. You're able to look critically at activities, and you're able to watch the world's best, adopt their practices and adapt them for your local needs. That's the global thing. The global activities, the best of them, and you adapt them for our local needs. And one of the interesting points is when you're at this level, the ability to look at trends and to make decisions as to what is the best approach for this kind of industry or that. Did you know that in the 1980s, Coke was the leading soft drink, outselling Pepsi and so on? Did you know that now they sell more water than Coke? They took a decision based on the trends that they were seeing to move in the production of water. And you would know the rest is history. Water, water everywhere. Everybody is drinking water even more than Coke. So the whole matter of this tertiary education thrust that we need to achieve in the Caribbean is being monitored. It's not just willy-nilly. We're looking at it and ensuring that you're getting the very best that the Caribbean can offer. And these are being monitored by a variety of agencies. The Association of Caribbean Tertiary Institutions, the universities in the Caribbean area, the Association of Caribbean Higher Education Administrators, the University Council of Jamaica, one of the oldest in the region, the National Quality Assurance accreditation agencies across the region, and CARICOM has instituted its own accreditation mechanisms, especially in medicine and allied health programs. Now, again, in terms of trying to achieve tertiary education, there is the problem of financing. And it goes throughout CARICOM. So Antigua is not unique in the fact that it has challenges in paying for tertiary. And when it comes to tertiary education, it's one of those that I feel strongly that governments should not be totally subsidizing, in as much as it is so close to the workplace that individuals are able to borrow, do their studies, and to pay back in the short term. And I'll show you why in a few slides hence. But just let's look at what's happening in the Caribbean. Government subsidies, variety of scholarships, etc., bursaries, and then they have government students' loan schemes, revolving schemes these are usually, and many of them have not really done well, and they are hurting in terms of lack of funding because students have difficulties finding jobs and paying back in real time. And that's one of the real problems there. But one of the big things that we have been trying to push in the Caribbean, not with a great deal of success, but gaining traction, is more and more to woo the private sector. And by wooing the private sector, this is something that has been demonstrated in the Eastern Tiger economies. You know, Japan, Malaysia, Singapore, Korea, and so on. What is happening? Private sector companies go into tertiary institutions, the community colleges and the universities, and they take the best of the lot and they say, look, come and do some hours in our institution, in our company, okay? We will pay directly some of your tuition in lieu of, actually giving you a direct stipend for the work that you do. So we pay the school, and as such, that helps them, the students, in being able to meet their school fees. The students, in having been exposed to these institutions on graduation, because usually it's about near to final year, and these students, on graduating, quite often are taken back into these companies. Win-win. The students are starting, knowing already the culture and the modus operandi. The average new employee takes at least 12 to 18 months before he or she is really optimally contributing to the bottom line in any company. So when you can take a new entrant who is already knowledgeable of how you work, already that company has an advantage. So everyone wins. The student can stay in school, finish his or her program, and the company is going to get a ready to work and contribute graduate. And so we are encouraging the private sector in a real way to get involved in tertiary education. And of course, we say where the family is able and the support groups, friends, etc., are able to assist, they should be doing so. Because the kind of outcome after graduation, as I hinted at, is one with a positive spin on the investment. And I'll show you that shortly. Student financial aid takes a variety of forms, not only grants, but very importantly, earn and study. And we at UTech are particularly proud to be able to speak to the fact that we use our students, getting them to help themselves. They assist in a variety of programs. They help in some of the security measures. They help in the offices. And they help around the campuses, those who have special skills. They paint, etc., plumbers, carpenters, etc. We employ them. And so whilst they're at school, they're also able to help earn their way through. And at UTech, we are pleased to say that some 5% of our total budget, and our total budget is in the region of 6 billion Jamaican dollars. That works out at about 60 million US dollars. You know, it's 100 to 1. That didn't shock you, did it? That's 100 to 1. But we are there, we are contributing our students 5% of our total budget, and over 1 in 10 of our students get some kind of help. So it is not altogether hopeless in terms of the help that we can offer to our students to ensure that they can go through school to the tertiary completion. Now, the matter of centers of excellence, because you want to be assured that the tertiary education that you're getting is one that is really of quality. It has to be of world class, because there's no point in saying, look, I'm going to graduate in Antigua to work in Antigua. This day, there is no such limited microcosm. The world is one global village, and you have to be world class or you're no class. This is an important concept. So you're not competing with John or David sitting next to you. You're competing with students in the world. And so when we say centers of excellence, it has to match up to what you would require as world standards. And therefore, it is not that one can just get up and say, look, I'm putting up a center of excellence. You don't just decree it. You have to achieve it. And there are some kinds of methods that we are able to use as a reference to tell us whether we're on the right kind of track in providing the very best for our young people and their education. And the World Bank gives us some guidance. And it is pointing out to what they call their gold standard for tertiary education. Research-based universities are the very best. Once you say university, we expect research. A college, you can have a lot of teaching and so on. But once you're using the term university, we expect some modicum of research. And what they're saying, in such institutions which are regarded as excellent, then they should have at least a third of the faculty members involved in some kind of innovation, some kind of study, some kind of research area. They ought to be whether from the artists, the scientists, the engineers, the technologists, etc. But we should be seeing at least 30% of them involved in some innovation. This slide could have... Anyway, we're getting on. What we're able to do, what we also expect based on a World Bank study, is that centers of excellence as well should be generating new information. New information that is going to be generating at least some 500 registrable marks, something new that you can register as your own intellectual property, and doing that per million population per year. So in Antigua, if you were to be setting up a center of excellence and getting involved in innovations of that nature, in institutions at the tertiary level, we'd be expecting, with a 100,000 population, you'd be expecting at least, say, even 5 new registrable. And like how you're way ahead in the area of information technology, that looks like you're well underway, although it's a government-driven thrust at this time. The World Bank studies are pointing out, too, that much of what you are doing in terms of innovation is not something just to be put on a shelf and to collect dust. It must earn something. And it can earn something in the region of $100 per 1,000 population per year. These are benchmarks that the world body has been introducing. So that is the kind of scenario around the tertiary education programs and the institutions that we want to see more and more of in the Caribbean. Now, about 3 years ago in Jamaica, we sat down and said, what are our most pressing needs in Jamaica? And based on the fact that our population is about 42% of CARICOM, it probably projects pretty much the similar needs in Antigua and many of our other territories. Nursing. That's why Professor Hewitt is here. She expects to take home some registrations because nursing is in dire need, and the nursing posts in the government, in Jamaica, for example, 2/3 of them are vacant. Not to mention that as we speak, North America alone, Canada and USA, require over 800,000 nurses. So the fact of being able to be trained for export is another area that the Caribbean needs to be looking at in terms of its education industry. Almost all the land surveyors in the Caribbean have been trained at UTEC over the years, from the days of being cast through to now. The pharmacists, well, we're here to talk pharmacy collaboration as well in Antigua. Teachers, especially those of the vocational education component, the competency-based programs that are teaching individuals in the vocational areas, parallel to just the straight academic inputs. We need many, many teachers in that area. And of course, engineers of all types. The mechanical, the electrical, the chemical, the aeronautical, the electronic, what have you. It is a dire need in the region. And the study of Professor Vanus James throughout the Caribbean showed extreme shortages of skills throughout the Caribbean, in the environmental sciences, the ecology studies. And you're going to come back to this kind of concept shortly. In architecture, in engineering, in the pure sciences, and in the areas of law. You notice when Registrar pointed out some of the aspects of our law program have been innovative because we've been looking at the law of sports. How can we, a sporting region, not understand the implications of the legal aspects of sports and entertainment, the law of intellectual property, the law of the World Wide Web, etc. We have to be au fait with that, and it is grossly lacking the jurisprudence around these areas. The agricultural sciences, particularly important to us, an area prone to natural hazards. And in terms of business and management, these are all areas of tremendous need in the region. And anyone pursuing tertiary education in these areas should not have a problem in terms of getting a job or generating a job, right? The entrepreneurial thrust. You need not come looking for work. You can come generating and creating new job opportunities, especially in these areas. And what this is telling you is when we take a student through these programs, on graduation, within the first couple of years, the earnings that they now are having as their income is representing this kind of return, this kind of interest on their monies that they use to pay for their education. There is no bank that is giving you this kind of return on your investment were it to be placed in the bank and just kept there. So the point of studying through to a first degree is important, even from the point of view of your investment, because it is bringing back returns even better than if you were to have put that money in the bank. Hence the encouragement of those who are able to pay to do so, and the returns are usually quite handsome. Let us look at what the universities in the Caribbean are doing. And when I say the universities, inclusive of what we call the offshore universities. There are some 70 universities right now offering programs throughout the Caribbean. Over 70 of them, and growing. And their areas, the humanities, history, geography, etc., education, medical sciences, the pure and applied sciences, inclusive of IT and agricultural sciences, the social sciences, including development and international studies, law, engineering. These are some of the main offerings in our universities, inclusive of our foreign universities in the region. UTech prides itself that the kinds of the top graduates that it is producing, again, are right at the core of the manpower needs of the region as defined and studied by the econometricians in the region. The teachers, especially of technical vocational areas, the nurses, the engineers, the pharmacists, the IT specialists, accountants, managers, business professionals. We are in the midst of it all. And what we're saying is, how then is the Caribbean going to succeed in getting its programs up to speed, internationally recognized, global standards? And the recipe for success that we have been recognizing is we have to work together, both those that are nationally based. We're too small to be working in silos. We have to be fostering partnerships and working together, both within our countries, between our countries, regionally, and internationally. So the whole mantra is that of partnerships. And I just use this to mention briefly that when you look at the problems in the Caribbean, our governments and the private sector looking for solutions of their problems and putting consultancies out for persons to come and study and make recommendations for changes and improvements in our modus operandi, using the Jamaican situation alone, the three main universities, UWI, UTech, and the Northern Caribbean University, all three combined get only 2% of those consultancies. All three combined. And the 98% goes to external institutions. This must make you vex. It is showing that they are not looking at our own intellectual, resource to assist in the Caribbean development. And so, we were saying to ourselves, how can we increase that competitiveness? Because based on our studies, a fellow called Winston Adams, one of the founder presidents of the University College of the Caribbean, it's a $6 billion business in the region, and that is what is attracting so many of our external universities to come into the region. How then are we going to improve the quality of the Caribbean thrust? Through our tertiary institutions, through our research institutions. Let us look at what is happening globally. The Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, those are the richest countries in the world. The Japans, the Germanys, France, Italy, USA, Canada, Australia. They get from research and development 50% of the total income that they earn, the GDP. And what they do, some 30% of their budget is earmarked for research and development. That is science, technology, and innovation. 30% of the budget, and as a result of that, they are earning 50% of their income. What's going on in the CARICOM region? only less than 1% of our gross domestic product results from our own research and development. Less than 1%. And together, we're spending 0.13% of our budget on research and development. That's science, technology, and innovation. We're not ready. We're not ready. And look at, just get a world picture. You'll find then that all the developed countries are spending a minimum of 2% of its GDP on science, technology, and innovation. Japan, 3.2, Singapore, 2.4, South Korea, 3, USA, 2.7, Canada, 2, the Caribbean as a whole, 0.13. So you can begin to see that the Caribbean as a whole has not yet taken science and technology and innovation seriously to really put it to work for it to gain income for itself. And although Caribbean governments have been talking the talk, talking about 3% should be going, they are far from that. And I won't say any more on the politics therein. The Caribbean universities, up till now, and our tertiary institutions have been trying to get into some research and into science-based research. But what we have been doing, we have been focusing on foreign interests, beg your pardon, on foreign interests. And we have been, for example, applying for research projects in which North American scientists are interested, and we are applying and competing with them for their money. We're applying and competing with North American scientists for North American money. We're not going anywhere. And further, on top of that, much of our research environment may not and is not, in fact, adequate in terms of its infrastructure, equipment, etc. So the Caribbean has a problem in terms of the areas that it wants to focus on. Now, I ask you the question, what it is that would let a prospective scientist or student want to bypass Europe, bypass North America, and come to the Caribbean to study? What are the areas that they would want to come here in the Caribbean to study? And there are just a few areas. The popular music is one. Did you know that there are only 3 countries in the world whose music is listened to worldwide? Every nook and cranny, from Africa through Europe, North and South America. There are only 3 countries whose popular music are listened to: the USA, the UK, and Jamaica. Did you know that? Fantastic stuff. Yet, if you want to study reggae, you have to go to Japan. That is where much of the study underlying the development of reggae is. And if you want to access the archives of reggae, you have to go to California. So the indigenous knowledge that is here, the tacit knowledge, is not being developed and harnessed and studied and codified in our own region. The tourism, Antigua, with 365 beaches, and mainly dependent on tourism, the kind of study in its ecology, the quality, the depth of that study, to ensure that we retain and maintain the pristineness of the ecology that will attract the tourism product, that is wanting. Our sport. I hear cricket still remains the most popular game in Antigua. Well, I guess you have Sir Viv. Cricket, from a West Indian point of view, I'll say no more. The athletics, however, okay, is where we have been showing a major development, that now we are a world superpower. Not only Jamaica, there's the Grenada group, there is the Hazel Crawfords of Trinidad, and you can tell me who is coming up from Antigua. But the point is, the talent is here. And if we were to study and understand the technology that goes into the preparation of athletes, then we could rule this roost for a long time. We should learn from what happened in cricket, where we depended on raw talent, just, bustling out and doing something major from time to time. That can't rule the world, because cricket in its own right is now a highly technological game. And as you know, many a game is won or lost even before it has begun. The Australians have pitches in their warehouse. If the Windies are bringing a set of fast bowlers, they simply roll out a pitch that's going to be good for slow bowling. All that kind of technology is easy and is well entrenched nowadays, but it's a study. And the study of the action, the simulations of the players. High technology gets into sports. It's not just a raw, talent anymore. We need to understand what is underpinning these. And we are not putting the kind of scientific study to understand how it is that one retains preeminence in these areas. Then there is another area of interest. There's a little product called jerk cooking, which is a smoking over the pimento bush, which was here from way back in the 16th, 17th century, and has nowadays become a specialty in every gourmet restaurant the world over, jerk. Yet jerk tastes different in Jamaica from what it tastes in Antigua, from what it tastes in New York, from what it tastes in London or Paris or where. There is no proper DNA that has been identified and studied. So the point I'm trying to make is, where the areas of our supremacy, where the areas of our strength have been demonstrated, we have not put the scientific study and innovation into it to really make it continue to be the best, and for us to own it, and for individuals to have to come here to study, not for them to take our efforts elsewhere. And like in Japan, where even steel pan invented in Trinidad, now it is in Tokyo that you go to understand the proper development of the steel pan. So we need to look at what we're really doing in terms of our intellectual property, and to put the scientific study that we have into the things that we do best. The words of Sir Arthur haunting us. The things that we do best. And there are lots of spin-offs for that. The health and sports tourism that can come from the spin-offs to our sporting, to our tourism products. It is amazing that we have not yet gotten on to those areas in any degree of intensity. And so what we are saying is that for the Caribbean to begin to take advantage of its areas of strength and to develop influentially on a world platform, we need to put more research and graduate study in these areas, hence the need for these graduate programs, these graduate individuals coming through the system. The World Bank is pointing out, that for the current worker to cope with the technology at the workplace, he or she needs at least 12 years of schooling. At least 12 years. 6 primary, 6 secondary, at least that. And if you're really going to get into the area of leading the thinking process, the next 3 or 4 in university level and even beyond in terms of the research, the technology and the support we're speaking to. Just an aside, we speak of music and sport being so important to us. Look, for every dollar invested in this area, music, sport, and entertainment, there is a return of 6-fold. And that money is spent here, right here in our region. Contrast that to the Digicells and the cable and wirelesses and the communication areas, where for every dollar invested, there is that kind of return, not even a 2-fold. Mind you, they give jobs, some 4-fold, development jobs. But much of that return on the money is not even being kept here. That money is going out. So in terms of the kind of jobs, in terms of the kind of study, in terms of the kind of investments that we need to make, our Caribbean region needs to be looking at its own creative industries, its music and its sport. Of interest, another area of sport that is probably one of the best balances. Whilst it produces about a fourfold return on the dollar invested, and much of that money stays here, it is giving a tremendous turnout in terms of job creation. So just a thought as to what it could bring if we were to focus on our own areas and not try to compete with the rest of the world for their own strengths. Let us concentrate on our domestic industries, our tourism, our food, our alternative energy. We have sunshine, we have the sea, the sand, the wave energy, etc. The alternative areas that we can be looking at as to how we can harness this and make our region a better place. The small and medium-sized enterprises related to our artisans, the cottage industries, we need to be looking more and more at how we can enhance those areas. We need to work in partnerships. Partnerships with the private sector, partnerships throughout our region, partnerships with those in our diaspora, because they are going to be the most empathetic to the needs of our region. So we need a highly skilled workforce that is knowledgeable of what's going on worldwide and to emphasize that in our areas of strength. Our universities and colleges must be providing programs of relevance, practically geared to our strengths. We're saying that over and over. And look at some of the crises that we're having in our region. Haiti is an integral member of CARICOM now. The average worker in Haiti has only 2.6 years of schooling. You heard what I just said not long ago. The World Bank, by its data, shows any worker worth his salt who can cope with the technology today needs at least 12 years of schooling. And what do you see here? None of us are ready. So when you hear Minister speaking to the need to get at least 1 in 3 with a tertiary degree, a tertiary achievement means at least some 15 years of schooling. Barbados is probably leading with 10.5, but still not there. So the crisis continues as to how we're going to create a developed status for CARICOM countries. The crisis continues. Our graduate pursuits are not geared to what the country sees it needs. Graduates are more and more doing the programs that they see the best returns. They're still going to be doctors, lawyers, engineers. They're not looking at the needs of the nurses and the pharmacists and the technicians, etc. They are migrating to the north, and we need to keep more and more our graduates who are analytical, critical thinkers, able to take the best and use them locally. The locals first. And this has to be the mantra for the 21st century. Using the mantra from the University of Trinidad and Tobago, that new university, we have to be training in those areas that we are creating capacity, offering opportunity, giving research that is relevant, and emphasizing excellence, the core of development for the Caribbean. And again, I say, the words of Sir Arthur are haunting us. There are some things which we in the Caribbean will do best, and there are those things which only we will want to do. It is on that context that I just wanted to stop there and to point out that the Caribbean has its strengths, it has its outstanding minds. But unless we really take those things that we can really use to our advantage locally, right here, and to have right here in our midst the nidus for research, development, the technological improvements thereon, and the innovation. Until we get that right, I don't think we're on the trajectory for developed status. Thank you.